Hello and welcome to your program of choice, People, Politics and Power, a program that gets you started with a thought of a better Nigeria where justice, equity and fairness thrive. The program has been structured to reverberate our belief systems and create a window for its citizens to see Nigeria as a one, indivisible, indissoluble federal republic. I am Ojon Bello. A lot of Nigerians from all walks of life and ethnic groupings appears to believe that the current Nigerian federal structure needs restructuring. It is not uncommon to hear that Nigeria will never move forward or develop if restructuring of the federation does not take effect. Some even say that breakup of Nigeria is imminent unless restructuring takes place. The curious thing about the clamor for restructuring of Nigeria is that none of the advocates have clearly detailed what they want to see Nigeria look like. This continued clamor for restructuring began with a call for true federalism that will devolve power to the states. Devolution of power was one of the amended items in the 1999 Constitution earmarked for voting in the two chambers of the National Assembly, the Senate and the House of Representatives. But the Senate, in its voting exercise, jettisoned the bill. Members of the House followed suit in a similar exercise conducted. The questions now are, was the National Assembly right to have voted against devolution of powers? Why the renewed call for restructuring? What do Nigerians understand with the term restructuring? How can agitations from different quarters be resolved? We have joining me in the studio a strategist and Deputy Communications Director for a group known as the Lower Niger Congress, Mark OLISE. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thank you, my brother. And good afternoon, Nigeria.
Good.
And everybody listening and watching.
Now let's take some reports from our correspondents and other experts on the issue.
33 sections of the constitutions were presented before the Senate and the House of Representatives. The votings in both chambers were prefaced by internal lobbying. Most relevant in the exercise is the issue which concerns restructuring. In particular, is the issue of the devolution of powers, which was rejected in both chambers. Analysts and political commentators see the rejection as turning the deaf ears to popular opinion and, by extension, postponing the evil days.
I cannot stand here and celebrate the amendments. But the other reason why we've ended up with this kind of amendment is that you can actually question the legitimacy of what happened. You don't amend a constitution on the sly.
This issue of devolution of powers, they shouldn't have played with it. There must have been a lot of sensitization.
And it is very painful. It is very painful because we are at a point when many people are crying for restructuring.
The voting pattern appeared to have played one whole region against the other. These legislators believe the northern agenda was played out, defying the agreement during the lobbying.
Many of them don't understand exactly the meaning of the word devolution. They don't understand. And if you look at the amendment, just read down the whole thing. Many of us were shocked. But the caucus has met. And I get a look, number this, we must vote them down. We don't want them. What is the reason? No reason.
Everybody in this Senate, or indeed in the National Assembly, is accountable to somebody. And we are accountable to our constituencies or senatorial districts, as the case may be. So no matter how hard someone clamors, unless there is a convergence of clamoring between his clamor and the clamor of my people, I will vote on the side of my people, what my people want.
The renewed tensions among agitators and the emergence of new groups such as Yoruba Liberation Command and the Niger Delta Revolutionary Crusaders are said to be part of the consequences of the action of the lawmakers.
It's creating more harm than good. I don't know whether after have you seen that the agitation is still on?
Nigerians deserve a better say in this constitutional amendment process than the National Assembly has been willing to accord to Nigerians. And they must understand that they are there at the instigation and behest and for the interests of Nigerians, and right now they're serving themselves.
The lawmakers say all hope is not totally lost, as the bills can still be represented. The amendment by the National Assembly will travel round all the state houses of assembly, and each clause requires the two-thirds majority to go through.
The program is People, Politics and Power. And like I did say, my guest is Mark OLISE. He's a strategist and Deputy Communications Director for a group known as Lower Niger Congress. What is Lower Niger Congress?
Lower Niger Congress, LNC, is a platform, or put it this other way, a coalition of groups and individuals that have been working on resolving the sovereignty questions in Nigeria, that have been working around issues of self-determination and freedom for the people, from the area known as the Niger Delta region to the Eastern Heartland.
Okay, so you are working with all these interest groups working for self-determination.
Yes, working for self-determination and a restoration of sovereignty to the people in accordance with the universal principle which the 1999 Constitution acknowledged, even when it lied at the beginning that the Constitution was formed by the people. It acknowledged later that sovereignty resides in the people from which government derives its authority. That is a universal principle all over the world. In fact, it is the bedrock of democracy, that sovereignty resides in the people. But in 1967, the military regime, and the political hegemony of that period usurped the sovereignty of the people, dissolved the structure that were negotiated under the principles of self-determination prior to independence, dissolved those structures, and unilaterally set up a 12-state structure. Subsequently made it 19, and so on and so forth. Today we have 36, But what we actually have is a unitary, country, which they call One Nigeria. A unitary country that have taken over people's land and resources, has usurped their sovereignty, and dictates to them, including even telling them the way they will be run by dictating a constitution, the 1999 Constitution. And beyond that, even going further, to arrogate themselves the power to even, amend those constitutions and claim that amending it is going to reflect our will. The questions being raised on the street and by the people and by the self-determination group and the various nationalities, including the indigenous peoples that find themselves within the contraption of Nigeria today, the questions being raised are sovereignty questions. They are not questions of, the magnanimity of the political class or an expression of whether you like it, any form of Father Christmas dishing out of gift. It is about them coming into the arena of politics and taking over their destiny. There are two ways by which people can come into the arena of politics. One is by revolution, and the other is by a bloodless process that the world has modified to call a referendum. It is why you see before anybody joins EU, the country conducts a referendum. Before a major policy change happens at the EU, the various countries will conduct referendum to decide whether they accept or not. If you want to leave EU, you conduct a referendum. But in Nigeria, since these people declared a state of emergency in 1967, they have excluded the people totally from the process of determining the ground norm, of expressing their right to self-determination, of determining their sovereignty, which is a principle in international law. Modern international law recognizes self-determination as, the process by which people determine their sovereignty, determine their existence, and determine their whatever political union they can become part of without interference from people outside that circle. That is what the Yoruba National Assembly, just expressed recently. It is what, MASOB has been expressing. It is what OPC has been expressing. And perhaps the 12 states that declare Sharia, who were the first to vociferously reject the 1999 Constitution by declaring Sharia law in their territory. These are the things they are expressing, their right to self-determination.
Now, the way people are not allowed to self-determine their operations, or the kind of regard we are no longer giving to sovereignty of the people. Do I call that your own idea of restructuring?
Well, it's not my own idea of restructuring. It is the general principle. In fact, it's the basic principle of how modern societies, modern democratic societies are organized. And that is the basis of the original clamor for restructuring of the federation. By that original clamor, they are saying that there should be a return to the constitutional order that was negotiated on the basis of self-determination prior to independence. If you remember, Zik and other people met in the East in 1947 or was it 1948 and said that the minimum requirement under which they will go into independence with the rest of Nigeria was self-determination. Sir Ahmadu Bello said it expressly. I saw the video of that. That of Zik, I read it. Ahmadu Bello's own was in a video. He said that they are deciding that they are not ready for independence before 1960. And that they are expressing that in accordance with their right to self-determination. He used that word. It's not a new, I was interacting with somebody recently. I was saying that people are brandishing slogans and the rest as if it's a new word. Self-determination has been there. In fact, the independence of Nigeria was fought and won on the basis of that modern international principle of the right to self-determination by all the key players. Awolowo, Zik, Ahmadu Bello, Tafawa Balewa, Abat Macaulay, the father of them all. It was on the basis of the right to self-determination that the various regions, came into agreement that they were going to, federate. In fact, the Middle Belt, in expression of their own right to self-determination, said they were not even going to go into one northern region with the core north, unless the core north compromised on Sharia. That they will not be in the same union with Sharia. The core north had to compromise on Sharia. Sharia was put on the table, it was compromised. For there to be a one north, only for these same people to turn back, recently to declare Sharia in their zones, contrary to the agreement reached before independence. So what people mean by restructuring is a return to the constitutional order that recognized the federating units that struggled for independence, that recognized the constitution that those federating units developed.
All right. Mark, since you are an important person in LNC, that's Lower Niger Congress, I think we will set aside almost a better part of this program today discussing self-determination. But then I want to know from you, break it down for us. What exactly is self-determination? Are we talking in terms of leadership, resource control, or what?
Self-determination, I will have to reiterate, that self-determination is a modern principle, a principle in modern international law that recognizes the rights of peoples, to determine, for themselves the way they want to be governed, which means to make a constitution for themselves, to determine their sovereignty, which includes determining political unions that they want to be part of. That also recognizes the right that they cannot be forced to be part of any political union. But when you hear about people telling you that the unity of Nigeria is non-negotiable, it's a confirmation that the people were conquered and are in bondage.
So it's negotiable?
Everything is negotiable. The people can only be part of a union by consent, by choice. It is why the opening paragraph of all constitutions say that we, the people, decide to make for ourselves the following constitution. Because the sovereignty resides in them. It's a universal principle. So that is self-determination. Without and when the people are exercising that, right, it is without interference from forces that are not part of the people in question that are exercising their right to self-determination.
Can we therefore move forward if people high up there in government are saying that Nigeria's unity is not negotiable, and some eminent personalities, including Wole Soyinka, Prof, are saying it is negotiable? Are we not in trouble?
We are not in trouble. Wole Soyinka has only just appreciated the fact that the United Nations, even reiterated, apart from the UN Charter that recognized self-determination many decades ago. Recently, in 2007, the United Nations General Assembly endorsed the rights of indigenous people to self-determination and spelled out details of what that right entails and how it can be expressed. Wole Soyinka, as a man of knowledge, has just expressed the fact, unlike individuals that parade themselves as professors of constitutional law and constitutional lawyers, senior advocates, and the rest, who still continue to defend the 1999 Constitution as if it doesn't matter the source, it doesn't matter that it's a forged document, by claiming that the people made it and it has been shown that the people didn't make it, in a suit that was filed on behalf of Anthony Naro, Wole Soyinka, Bishop Bonigi, Dokubo Asari, Ralph Wazurike, and a couple of others, Alhaji Yerima Shetima, who just gave that ultimatum. Yeah, he was part of the signatory to the lawsuit that was filed on their behalf by the Secretary General of the Lower Niger Congress, Tony Nnadi. It is clear what the situation is, but some people still want to continue to enjoy the loot from the annexation of all the sovereignties of our people by the Nigerian state and the hegemony that's perpetrated that in 1967 and are still in control today. You see them gather either as Council of State or gather under whatever toga. They are still in control today. The same people that usurp our sovereignty, the same people that prosecuted the war of genocide, the same people who, after the war, said no victor, no vanquish, carried on as if there was a booty of the war that had to be shared, and they distributed oil blocks to themselves. Today, these people, folk cannot probe them or investigate into their wealth, but these people are richer than those they call richest people in Africa. I can tell you that the loot of these people will make the lives of Dangote look wretched. Even Abacha's family said that recently, that no matter how rich Dangote is, his wealth will still be, like wretchedness compared to theirs.
All right, you have been talking about referendum. Don't you think, can't the National Conference or Sovereign National Conference or whatever take care of referendum?
A Sovereign National Conference? Of course, a Sovereign National Conference was the vehicle, that was canvassed over the years, through which all of these sovereignty questions can be, resolved. Yes. But unfortunately, those who benefit from this mediocre system, from this master-servant relationship or master-servant constitutional order, from this apartheid-like constitution, have stood their ground and resisted, the attempts to convoke that conference. In fact, it was a major demand by NADECO. NADECO included all the forces, that wanted the restoration of sovereignty and true democracy in the country. It was a demand that before the country goes into transition in 1998-99, that Sovereign National Conference should hold. It was the idea was to make sure that power truly returns back to the people, and the people now decide their constitutional order, determine who gets what and what, set up rules that will make sure that even the president of the country can be investigated for crimes, including corruption. Unlike what they have today, that they are above, there are certain people that have been spelled out to above the law. Yes. The FCID cannot dare go and investigate Mr. President. That is not a democratic country. It's not a free country. They cannot, EFCC cannot investigate Mr. President. That's not a free country. Rather, they wait for dictation from these forces to go ahead and do their investigation. They have become, it's rather than becoming an instrument for crime control, prevention, and investigation, they are now vehicles for, policing and preventing the people from expressing their sovereignty. Only recently I heard that they tear gas and shot an elderly Nigerian, Charlie Boy Oputa. That is the function that they now serve because of, the fact that Nigeria is a police state. Nigeria is an occupation state. And I would like to use this medium to put the word on notice that, based on the rejection of the current constitutional order in the country by prominent groups and nationalities that are currently within the control of Nigeria.
Even institutions.
Yes, and institutions such as the Yoruba National Assembly, OPC, World Igbo Congress, Ohaneze Ndigbo, Middle Belt Forum, Arewa Consultative Forum, including the Arewa Constitutive Youth Forum, and so on the basis of the rejection of the current constitutional order. It means that Nigeria, as presently constituted, is a fraud. It means that Nigeria, as presently constituted, is a rogue state. And what are the implications for the world? The implication is that Nigeria has left a lot of spaces in the country ungoverned and contested and challenged by several forces, positive and negative forces, such as you can see your Sambisa forest and several places in the northeast. You can see that the creeks of the Niger Delta, even the Nigeria marine forces can't even claim to police there effectively. So what are the implications for the world? With so many ungoverned territories, there is room for anarchy, there's room for terrorism. And the refugee problem that Nigeria is contributing, you'll be shocked that it's more than what Syria is contributing currently. So just imagine when it fully leads to a breakdown, if the world, the United Nations Security Council, doesn't come together today to help in this smooth transition from a union that has collapsed irreparably to one that, will ensure order and peace, for the world. This is the most populous part of Black Africa.
Okay. Can you use this forum to actually spell out what are the functions of the United States Security Council in the present affairs situation of Nigeria?
The United Nations Security Council, has set aside an agenda for itself to fight, terrorism. You have counter-terrorism. They have anti-terrorism programs. They have counter-terrorism programs. And they also have a program on promotion of democracy. One, there's no democracy down here, even when we profess to be one. They have to calm down on that. It's part of their function. There is also the counter-terrorism and anti-terrorism. The fact that Nigeria has so many ungoverned spaces because of the collapse of the state structure, being an occupation state, we are posing a threat, security and terrorism threat to the world. You know about the Christmas Day bomber. You know Boko Haram operating in several territories around the Chad Basin. You know how much of the terrorists have been exported from here to Somalia, at least we get from the news, and other Al-Qaeda zones, including Arab area, Syria, Iraq, Libya. So the world should treat the case of Nigeria from the security perspective, that they have to come down and discuss with the various peoples that are expressing their right to self-determination. They have to come down and discuss with them and allow them, via an orderly process, assist them to transit to a new constitutional order that would be devoid of rancor and anarchy.
All right, this is People, Politics and Power on AIT, and my guest is still here, Mr. Mark OLISE, and he is a strategist and deputy communication director for a group known as the LNC, that is the Lower Niger Congress. Very soon, we want to listen to the acting president talk on hate speeches. But before we bring in the acting president, don't you think that what you refer to as structural breakdown is responsible for hate speeches?
As we said, it depends on who is defining hate or non-hate speeches. And as I also said, the breakdown, and the fact that the occupation state has lost its hold around the people. They have woken up, and the people have entered the arena of politics. It's either you allow them to express it peacefully via a referendum on whether they want to continue to be part of this union. Do
we have referendum in our constitution?
The constitution was imposed. The people, in expression of their sovereignty, do not recognize impositions. And whatever you impose does not take away their sovereign powers.
All right, please go on.
And so unless you allow them to peacefully express, their entry into the arena of politics peacefully via a referendum, which is a modern strategy that has been evolved, or you allow them to do that revolutionary, They're already taking revolutionary steps, which for now is peaceful, you know, and they're already planning and working to organize a referendum for themselves.
Peaceful revolutionary steps?
Yes, they're already taking
Can there be peaceful revolutionary steps?
Yes.
Okay, towards revolution?
Yes,
okay.
Peaceful revolutionary steps. No, steps that are revolutionary. Okay. You know, wanting to change and all that, change their situation, restore back their sovereignty. And they are taking peaceful steps. But the Nigerian state is responding violently, shooting down people at Onitsha Bridge, Aba, you know, and elsewhere. Even in the north, you know, shooting at people in the southwest, shooting at people. These things are recorded and reported as numbers. Nobody digs into them because they are not big and wealthy thieves, you know, of our commonwealth. You know, so unless you allow the authorities of Nigeria and the authorities of the world should come in to help them to follow through with the peaceful process. Failure to, these people will go ahead and it could lead to a breakdown of law and order. You know, so the situation we are in Nigeria now is like the situation that South Africa was in 1990, when there was a sick president, Peter Botha. And Frederick de Klerk took over. Frederick de Klerk, everything was on, there was total breakdown in the country, and Frederick de Klerk and his confederates had to come to the realization and agreed and made a public statement that they cannot continue to govern on the basis of the apartheid constitution, which is similar to 1999 constitution, the constitution made by a few people that annex the land and resources of others, that takes away their sovereignty. You know, that is the same with us, that they cannot continue to govern. It is no longer, you know, capable of invoking loyalty or commanding respect from the people. So there was a need for a transition. And it was on the basis of that transition, which first of all recognized the sovereign powers of the people, the right of the people to self-determination, that CODESA was convened. That, you know, took some years negotiating all of the, you know, processes that later became the democratic constitution that South Africa operates today, that created the room for ANC to participate and get to power, you know, and the restoration of all other freedoms in South Africa. That's the situation we are. So we have an acting president and a sick president who, you know, is outside the country. They just have to come to the, you know, public admission that the country has broken down, that they cannot continue to govern this country the way it is, that they have to, you know, dialogue and listen to the various, you know, nationalities that make up Nigeria, and, you know, give room for them to negotiate how they want to progress. And Bola Ige had spelled that out. In the late Bola Ige, when he was alive, he was asked a question on what restructuring, what entails restructuring. He said there are two stages in restructuring. The first stage is to ask the first question in restructuring, is that do the people want to continue in the project in the Union of Nigeria? If the answer is in the affirmative, you now move to the next stage, the terms, spelling out the terms. And, you know, from that you can tell that that process must be done by the people. It is what, you know, we have recently coined as auto restructuring.
Not through imposition. Not through
imposition. Auto restructuring. You know, because restructuring as defined by the rulers of Nigeria and the political class, you know, is devolution of power. More powers to the states that are detections, that are creations of the unitary Nigeria, states by which they used to control people and enslave them more. Not, you know, returning back to the sovereign status that the people enjoyed, including their regions that they negotiated. You know, so if they come down from their high horses and make this, you know, declaration, it means that there will be a better and orderly transition. If not, you know, there might be anarchy, and they will be held responsible by the world. I'm not sure they will escape the International Criminal Court for the roles they played, either in genocide of the past or in, you know, presiding over the chaos of today.
And even probably not listening to the people, as in the case of de Klerk in South Africa at that time. All right. Let's now listen to the acting president on hate speech.
Those who make these charges of marginalization are altruistic. Those who say, my ethnic group has been marginalized, my religious group has been marginalized, that they say so for altruistic reasons or altruistic purposes. I want to say that that's not necessarily the case. As a matter of fact, most times when people say the Southwest has been marginalized, what they're saying is, I have been marginalized, appoint me because I'm from the Southwest. That's simply what it is. Whenever people propose these or make these charges of marginalization, usually it is self-serving. I sat with the president once when two members of the National Assembly came to him and said that we, referring to an ethnic group in the north, or not an ethnic group, states in the north, have been marginalized. And he went on to explain why. He said that, and mentioned some states had no senior ministers. He said Kaduna State has no senior minister. The only minister is a minister of state. Mentioned also, I believe Sokoto State has no senior minister. Even Katsina, your own state, Mr. President, has no senior minister. All of the ministers are ministers of state. Then he mentioned another group and said all these people all have senior ministers. Some groups in the South have senior ministers. The president, as you can imagine, reflected for a moment. But before he answered, I answered. I said the truth of the matter is that there was no consideration at the time that these appointments were made about whether or not you wanted to appoint a senior minister from this side or the other, or from that side or the other. And that's why you find that many, including the president's own state, does not have a senior minister. The distinguished members were not very happy with my contribution. But the truth of the matter is that if you look at any group, if you look at any particular situation, you can bring up a narrative that will satisfy your own particular idea or whatever it is that you believe. You can bring up that narrative. A group of people came to me once and said, this cabinet is full of Muslims. You are a pastor. Surely you should be taking care of the Christian community. When we looked at the names and the religions of these people, we found that there were 2 more Christians than Muslims in the cabinet.
There is a close relationship between democracy within political parties and democracy within the nation itself. Put simply, you cannot give what you don't have. You cannot build democracy on a substructure of dictatorship and intolerance. A political party that constricts the freedom of its members cannot really offer freedom to the citizens of the nation. Can it? No. Democracy is not just an idea. It is a cultural practice. For a number of years now, we have had political parties, even governing ones, which hardly hold meetings of their important organs, including those meant for the democratic selection of their leadership, or even constitute institutions prescribed in their constitution. In the absence of those meetings and elections, their existing leadership, often under the direction of the executive at the state or federal level, they fill the void. If there is void, they fill it. That is not party building, but party bullying. It is certainly not a way to democratize parties and aggregate their members' opinions, interests, and aspirations. This means that efforts to deepen Nigeria's democracy must include efforts at democratizing our political parties. And the representatives of all the parties are here. The institutionalization of democracy in our internal party processes will help us deepen democracy in Nigeria. leaders are more likely to tolerate opposition from citizens and other parties if they tolerate it within their own party. The lack of internal democracy in political parties is one of the reasons for the fraught relationships among parties and their elected representatives in the legislature and the executive. The loyalty of some in the legislature and executive lies not with the party, but with a godfather somewhere who sponsored them. And the godfather may even be in a rival political party. Such anomalies will reduce if internal democracy flourishes in our political parties, and by extension, the wider society.
The Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and...
Well, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is creating the impression there that we have found ourselves in this state and stage of despair because of this government. Don't you think even this government inherited what we now refer to as a state of despair?
Well, I think the likes of Atiku Abubakar, they're analyzing the situation from the limitation of a particular time frame.
Okay.
If they analyze it holistically, they will see that there is no player, there is nobody that is a player, a major player of this regime that has not been there, and that was not part of the hegemony or the oligarchy that led us here, or that did not endorse the imposition of this 1999 constitution.
Because we've been recycling.
Yes. Is it the current president on leave, on sick leave?
That has not been there.
He has been there as a lieutenant in the Nigerian army. He was one of those who led troops in the massacre in the north. It's on record. In civilized climate, he should be facing the International Criminal Court for war crimes. You know, he was a Lieutenant Buhari. Or you want to talk about the Gowon, you want to talk about Abdul Salami and the rest. They were all there in the 1966 July 29 coup. They were there. 1967 declaration of state of emergency and creation of 12 states. They were made administrators and rulers and military, whatever, or the other. You know, so there is nobody that will claim victimship or claim to be a victim now. There's nobody today that will want to extricate, you know, successfully his or herself from the mess in the country. The rot in the country for Atiku, he sees it as being a recent thing. Fine, it might have gotten worse, but a bad foundation can only lead to worse and worse result, and that is the state of the country. The question being raised by the people are sovereignty questions, as I said. It is not about some politicians who are saying whether Christians are getting more or Muslims are getting more.
That's not it.
It's about people who are saying, I've supported the loot, I've come to join this armed robbery gang, so since I'm a fellow armed robber, I should get a fair share. That is the kind of debate among the political class of Nigeria. I should get a fair share, that people who are from this side are getting more than me. That is not the question the people are raising. The question the people are raising are sovereignty questions. That there cannot be a state that does not derive its authority from them, and that they will not be loyal to a state that does not derive its authority or our authority from them. They will also not be loyal to a state that imposes a constitutional order on them. That they want their sovereignty restored, and in fact they are already taking steps to restore their sovereignty. You know, so the question is very clear on what restructuring means. It's about the people's right to participate in the democratic process by way of determining the ground rules, the ground norm, and the constitutional order upon which those who will run the state are going to operate under, such that they have to be loyal to the people, be questionable, be recallable, be impeachable, be investigatable. Just like the way U.S. President Donald Trump is being investigated.
Yes, yes.
And he cannot do anything about it, other than to keep, claiming his innocence or proving his innocence, as the case may be, as a political leader, So the people want a responsible and accountable state, and they believe it can only come about when their right as a sovereign people is recognized.
A gentleman came on that seat you are sitting down now and said, all he wants, not just what we clamor for, this restructuring we're talking about, but that people are not even holding their leaders accountable. That is what he has considered that will gladden his heart as restructuring, that we need to restructure our minds and hold our leaders accountable. We have left that and everybody is just talking about some other things. Do you believe that will be a step forward if we now decide and said, okay, Governor, how much did you, or this Senator, what are you doing with this constituency fees you are collecting every time? How do you react to that?
People are doing that, but their capacity to do that is limited because, you know, there is a constitutional order that is supposed to check all of that. But rather, it's an imposition and comes with its shortcomings and excludes the people from having such powers in total, enforceable by institutions.
So the role of voters now will just be
to whatever thief they bring into, yeah, you go and cast your vote. And if the balance of force does not favor, not even balance of vote, if the balance of force does not favor the person you vote for, he will not even be there.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So the people want to determine the constitutional order. They want to be the ones, you know, that will determine whether you will continue. If they are finally elected you, whether you will continue the next time. They want to be the ones to determine the system to be run. Because if they determine the system to be run, they will, of course, you know, determine for themselves a competitive process or a system. They will, of course, determine for themselves a system based on merit. The Chinese commissioned, you know, a team to study what, you know, are the pillars of Western societies. And you'll be shocked that out of the 7 major pillars they discovered, none had to do with the political, you know, system.
Yes.
Out of the top 7, but among the top 7, the most top of the top 7 was operating a merit-based system. And that is what was adopted in Singapore, in South Korea, in China, and name it, the Asian dragons and tigers. So if the people determine for themselves, you know, their constitutional order, their future, their sovereignty, and the rest, of course they will put those machinery in place. Not a system where the brilliant man is an endangered species. Not a system under which a man that is competitive, a man that is ambitious, that wants to excel by way of hard work and expression of talent and gifts will be endangered. But one in which such people will get their way. In Nigeria, you are stigmatized. If you are ambitious, you want to work hard, or you work hard and you are surviving somewhere and progressing, people want to stigmatize you and say you like money a lot. People want to stigmatize you, you like grammar a lot. People want to stigmatize you, you too think say you too know. What society operates that way? Do you hear that in Britain or US, in Japan and the rest, that somebody is saying that they do like say you too know? These are languages in the socio-political balance of Nigeria. These are words that shows how mediocrity has been elevated to the status of a state policy and a societal norm. That if you try to operate beyond the level, beyond the mediocre level, you are endangered. Either you start frustrating you from the university, you will not graduate well, or you will not graduate at all.
So you too know.
Or when you come out, you will not get into the public service. Even when you get into the public service, you can only excel because you hid your talent. If you don't hide your talent, you'll be stagnated or shown the way out.
Now, National Assembly voted against devolution of power. Let's get your reaction on record.
Okay. First of all, maybe we should understand the context, you know, within which the votes were taken or the debates, you know, came to the floor of the National Assembly. The National Assembly is a product of Decree 24, which is the imposition called 1999 Constitution. And the attempt or the effort of that Constitution is to operate Nigeria as a unitary entity under what they call One Nigeria, that has set up 36 states, 774 local councils to help them monitor and hold the people in bondage, in perpetual bondage. You know, so it is not surprising to people like me that, you know, a National Assembly created for that purpose, you know, will not willingly cede their power to reduce the power to all of those other units. They want to still be able to, you know, control the country unitarily, you know, because for them, they don't see those 36 states as autonomous units. They see them as appendages that exist, you know, at their will. They can decide to annul or merge any of them, you know, unilaterally. So when people talk about restructuring, some of them are thinking that this same political class should now become magnanimous overnight and decide to cede some of their powers in the form of devolution of power. Also decide to merge some states. But then when they do it, they will not decree it. Like they passed a law which said that the president does not need to sign, you know, an amendment. You know, they too can declare, can sign. You know, these are fraud. Even amendments of constitutions in other countries are subjected to referendums. When you do an amendment, even if it's a one-point amendment on one subject amendment, it is put to a vote. But even these people, they are not even thinking about that because they know that sovereignty, that the power they exercise is not a product of the sovereignty of the people expressed by the people. So they are very conscious of their role as custodian of this occupation state, as custodians of this rogue state, as defenders of the forged document that has collapsed, the 1999 Constitution, that lied that the people of Nigeria made that Constitution for themselves. So when you look at it from that angle, you won't be surprised that they refuse to cede some of their powers in terms of devolution of power. You know, then for those who are hoping on devolution of power being some form of restructuring, at least they can come back home to those who understand it better. That you cannot expect people who are beneficiaries of a forged system, of a fraudulent system, to now on their own wake up and start ceding some of the powers or helping you to get your sovereignty back and the rest. It is by you insisting and organizing yourself. You know, what is a federation? A federation is a union of constitution. Nigeria went into independence in 1960 as a union of constitutions called Federation of Nigeria. The Western region had its constitution, the Eastern region had its constitution, the Northern region had its constitution. In 1963, a provision was made for the various self-determination efforts in the country, one of which was of the Midwest. And the referendum was conducted that gave birth to the Midwest. A referendum was conducted. It wasn't a decree or imposition of anybody, you know. So that has been the situation, the general principle. Before these military boys came, hijacked the whole system. So then there was direct military rule. Now there's indirect military rule. Nigeria, as we speak, is not a democratic state. It's not a democratic society. It is an indirect military system operating under the power of Decree 24.
So it's a mixture of military administration and civilian administration. That is your submission.
It is a military regime, but it's an indirect one.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike OLISE. That's all we have for you on today's edition of People, Politics and Power. My guest has been a strategist and deputy communications director for a group known as Lower Niger Congress, LNC. Mike OLISE, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, my brother. And wake up, Nigerians.
I am Odion Bello. Bye for now.